So, hello and welcome back to my channel. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Saskia and I'm a psychology student. I'm in my final year, and a question everyone doing this degree asks is, what the fuck can I do with my degree? We also don't get a good answer, as in we have had careers modules. They've just kind of said, please do our masters, or you could do health psych, you could do clinical psych. What if I don't want to? Like, what if my dream isn't working with other people and doing those things? What if I just want to do this degree to do a degree? People will do this degree because they know the next steps. They know they want to go and do clinical psychology. Clinical psychology tends to kind of be the only one people do this degree for. Or some people will do this degree overdoing like mental health nursing. Some people will do this degree though and then go to mental health nursing because they want to do like hands-on things. So I thought I would go through what you can kind of do with the degree. I've made a notion because I can't think of this off the top of my head. And basically I have split it into categories. So we've got masters that you need, that you then kind of do a doctorate for, certificates or diplomas, straight into a related field, into another field. Also, I don't know if this will apply for every single degree. Most of the things I've looked at, you kind of need to have a BPS accredited degree. Don't really do a psychology degree if it's not BPS accredited, because it's kind of then not a very useful degree to have, I would say. So, we'll start with something nice and generic of just doing a master's. So, generally, these masters are in a discipline. So you generally would have, you know, a master's in health psychology, a master's in clinical, a master's in social, a master's in developmental, a master's in cognitive. Most of the time, they're 90% research methods, as in, if you search psychology masters, 90% of them are either research methods or conversion courses. And then even within like your developmental masters, it will be research methods. So basically, if you don't ever want to do research methods again, you probably can't do further education, because you either need research methods to get into it, or we'll be doing research methods. Because if you're doing further education, it tends to be to work in research. You need the methods to do that. So yeah, so generally you have generic ones. If you search psychology masters, you will just get like, oh, clinical, developmental. There are then more niche ones, as in, I think a lot of the London unis do very oddly specific masters. Like, normally you just kind of have like a master's in psychology with law, a master's in developmental. You can go, there's a website called Find a Masters. If you just search psychology, you will get like 57 pages, but you can kind of see what is available. I would say these masters you are doing if you want to go into research or further study. If you want to do a PhD, if you want to be a researcher or a lecturer, you either need these masters or they are a useful step to get you there. Or you can then kind of have like these niche masters where you're then going to go into that very niche career path. You can kind of have like broad though. So like if you did a master's in developmental psychology, you don't have to then go into research of developmental psychology. You are just best equipped to go there. A master's you are doing to go into research. And also masters are really expensive. You don't do them for shits and gigs. Then, so that is generic masters. Generic masters you're doing for a research-based purpose, I would say, or because it's kind of a requirement. So things like clinical psychology, health psychology, educational psychology, you typically have to have done a doctorate to get in, to have that job. Well, not typically, you have to have a doctorate. Normally, they would kind of prefer your application if you have a master's. So you can do a doctorate in educational psychology. However, you might stand out better if you have previously done a master's in educational psychology. It is not a requirement, but because so many people want those masters, especially clinical, you tend to be better off having a master's in that field or having significant work experience in that field. So for those careers, you need the doctorate. Sometimes it's on top of a master's, sometimes they would require you having a master's to get into that doctorate, but it will depend per university. So you sometimes don't need the master's, but it will make you stand out. So it's about financially, can you afford it? Would you be better off getting experience in the field? because typically you need experience anyway. So like if you're going to do a doctorate in clinical psychology, yes, a clinical psychology master's would be useful, but if you've never had any experience as a clinical psychologist, I would probably take someone with experience because they know what clinical psychology is. So yeah, normally I think it's kind of recommended that you have like 2 years of experience. You can get them in your undergrad. So for a clinical psychologist, being a healthcare assistant, you can do it in your undergrad, easy. Or what you can do is when you finish uni, go and work as a healthcare assistant, a teaching assistant for a year or two, building up a portfolio to then apply for these doctorates. What some people do is they will, do their undergrad, go and do the work in the field and realise it's not for them. And that is sometimes better because you've not wasted the money on the masters. Like you've gone out, you've had a job, you've earned money, you've not wasted money on a master's, and you now can just think, right, let me reevaluate. Although, if you've got that master's, you're probably quite committed, I don't know. The kind of difficult thing with those where you have a doctorate is you have to want to do it, like a lot, because it is going to be 7 or 8 years in education before you get anywhere. So like, get a lot of experience before you do them. Whether you want to do that during your undergrad, after your undergrad, whether you want to do a master's, you could do your master's and be getting experience. There are a lot of options, but I think the only three things that you need the doctorate for are health, educational, clinical. I might be mistaken. I think those are the 3 that you need them for. So again, masters would be nice, experience also nice, pick and choose. You can then do certificates or diplomas. So this is not going to be a 1-year master's course. These are I think they tend to be like months long or weeks long, where you do like an intensive training course on a niche thing. So like it's normally CBT. So like you could do, after your undergrad, maybe get some experience and then go and do a 1-year diploma or a certificate on CBT. That will then lead you to being a psychological wellbeing practitioner, but you will need experience. Do this certificate rather than a master's. It tends to be a bit cheaper, but I don't know how the government funding in terms of loans will work. It's more direct, I would say. You get out of uni, you maybe do some experience, you do a certificate, you then go and get the job. Whereas a doctorate, potentially, you're in that education for 6 years, you've got a lot of thinking time to basically think, do I actually want to do this job? But you've already committed. Whereas doing a certificate, it's 1 year, it's not the end of the world. Then do like low intensity therapy training. Most of these kind of certificates and diplomas are basically training you to be a therapist. You're not a clinical psychologist, but you are doing most of what they would do anyway, which is delivering therapy. However, if you want to be someone that kind of delivers therapy, you could also do something like mental health nursing. Like there are lots of ways that you can deliver therapy. So like a lot of people do a psychology degree to be therapists. You can become a counselling psychologist, you could do CBT courses, you can do a master's, you can do a doctorate. There are hundreds of ways that you can do the therapy. So like if you're absolutely heart set on a clinical, go and do that. But if you just want to do therapy, you could probably do a 1-year CBT intensive course and you're then qualified to give CBT. Like, you don't have to be a clinical psychologist to have that face-to-face therapeutic interactions. You can then do a PGCE. PGCE, teacher training for secondary or primary education. Secondary education, you would be teaching psychology, potentially like something else as well, like sociology, biology, related fields. Primary education, they don't learn psychology, so you would just be a primary school teacher. Then PGCEs, I think a lot of people are seeing as a good option because working as a teacher, people kind of like the term times. A PGCE, you get funded like an undergrad. So a master's, you get £11,000 as a maintenance loan, you get no tuition fee loan. A PGCE, you will get the exact same as what you had for your undergrad. So if I applied for a PGCE, I'm getting my tuition fees and my maintenance loan, which means I can survive. So if you're financially struggling, a PGCE will it will go directly into a job, as in like 1 year later, you apply as a teacher, you start working as a newly qualified teacher. And if you kind of want to stay in education, you're staying in education. It might be less psychology, it will be less psychologically related than if you then did like a master's in psychology, because that will have research methods. So kind of that is less related to psychology, but like you could still be teaching psychology in the secondary school. What you can then do is just finish your undergrad and go straight to work in a related field. So there are lots of kind of entry-level jobs which you either, they like appreciate that you've got a degree, you don't need one. You could have probably done a lot of these jobs in your undergrad. So something like a mental health support worker, a healthcare assistant, a maternity care assistant, you can work that during your undergrad. You literally just need GCSEs to get in that, and it's also very good experience. It's quite, I don't want to say it's easy, but there are lots of jobs, as in you can quite easily become a healthcare assistant. You don't have to work that much. You can be bank, you can work 1 day a week, you can work just in summer, but you're building up the experience, and that might help you identify if you actually want to become a mental health nurse instead, if you really do think clinical is definitely going to be the one for you. If actually that was too overwhelming for you, you can't do it. Or if you become, a healthcare assistant in a drug rehabilitation centre, you might think, I would like to actually work in drug rehabilitation instead of this field. You can then do a role as an AP. An AP is an assistant psychologist. Normally people would kind of do this, gaining the experience to then apply for a doctorate. So you probably wouldn't do the master's, you'd work as an AP for 2 years, then you'd apply for the doctorate. An assistant psychologist is a baby clinical psychologist. So I don't want to butcher her name, but Selena Oze, I think, has really good vlogs on this. She worked as a HCA, then she did an AP role. AP roles are competitive though. So you probably can't just do an undergrad and then do it. You probably have to have had experience, whether that be that you did your dissertation in clinical, whether that be that you worked in a clinical related field, whether that be that some people will kind of, when they finish uni, apply for masters in clinical and AP roles and just take whichever one comes up first. Then become an assistant educational psychologist. I'm not too familiar about this. I haven't seen that much information about that role. But again, you're kind of building up to become an educational psychologist. Like, it's probably not, it could be worth doing just for experience, but it's probably not worth doing just to pass time. Like, you're probably going to want to be doing it to either identify if you'd want to be an educational psychologist or get the experience to then become the educational psychologist. You can then do things like teaching. So you can become an unqualified teacher. Some places will train you, pay to train you as a teacher. So you would go straight to work in a school. You are not a qualified teacher, but like within a year of working, you gain newly qualified teacher status, or you can become a teacher's assistant. So like teaching, that's kind of a career that you are set for life, I would say. Teaching assistant you might be doing to gain experience for a master's, or to gain experience if you want to become a teacher. So like, again, the kind of teaching assistant, good experience for a master's. Good experience if you want to become a teacher, good experience if you want to kind of work in, like with children with special needs, those kind of things. Similarly to that, tutoring, I would say that's not necessarily a career, but it's more like a side career. So like maybe during your undergrad, you could do tutoring to identify if that kind of teaching environment is what you would want to be doing. What you can then also do is become a research assistant. This is something that you don't need experience for, but it's good to have experience. Again, a lot of these things are you don't need experience, but you will stand out more with experience, because so many students do psychology degrees and we don't fucking know what to do with them. So we just apply willy-nilly. As a research assistant, you will essentially be doing research. Like, you will sign up, you apply for a project. You don't tend to apply just to be a research assistant. So like, you go on Indeed and you'd find a project that you want to do, you will apply as a research assistant. They tend to be kind of part-time jobs. It tends to be like a 1-year contract. You're not going to be kind of set, like permanently having a job. It would be like a 1 year, 2 years, that kind of thing. It can be good experience to get like before you get a PhD or before you go on to do a master's. it can be a good idea to identify, you know, do you actually like the field that you're working in? Is that something you could see yourself doing like forever, permanently? It's also just a good way to kind of gain some research skills and almost pass the time. As in, even if I didn't want to be a researcher, I feel like doing a research assistant role would still be quite valuable. Like, we have a research assistant scheme in my uni. I've done that 3 times. I enjoy it. Even if I didn't, like, I don't know what career I want to do. So I could just work as a research assistant for a bit while I get my stuff together. What you can then do is, like, with a research assistant, if you then have a master's in research methods, you can become a research associate. That is obviously like a higher level job. You are then entered into the research field. You can also be a trainee IAPT or CBT practitioner. That is basically a therapist. You normally need some kind of experience first. So again, get experience in your undergrad. Whether it's like, I always say in your undergrad, first year we're panicking, you know, but second year, start applying for random jobs, get some experience. So like those practitioner roles, you normally need experience, but it's a good alternative to clinical because you are going into a career. You are becoming a CBT practitioner. You are delivering that kind of therapy. It's a similar role to clinical, but without having to do a master's, without having kind of all of that depth and educational commitment. You can then do something which is kind of slightly related, so being like a student wellbeing officer. So like in your sixth form or your secondary school, you probably had like the wellbeing team. You also have, like in universities, we have enabling services, which are like the mental health team. A lot of those careers are psychologically related because it's kind of mental health. You don't need a psychology degree. It could be another degree. But again, when I've been looking and I've kind of searched like psychology graduate into Indeed, that comes up quite a lot. We then have jobs in other fields. So fields that are less psychologically related, things like marketing. Marketing, a lot of people from psychology work in marketing because it's good money. You are, however, competing with marketing students though. So like, you know, a marketing student who's done the 3-year degree on marketing, you have maybe done 1 module on marketing, it's going to be difficult competition. You can work in recruitment. I don't know how you get into recruitment, I don't understand it. If you search like recruitment officer, a lot of them will want a psychology degree. Same with like human resources. HR is apparently a really good pathway to go through. It's not psychology, but it's kind of psychologically related. You're working with people, you're probably using some of the skills from your degree. You can also just work as a generic research person for companies. Like, I think like even like Lloyd's are hiring like research officers where like they want you to have a degree in like psychology or maths or kind of some kind of research based thing. You can still work for them. Like, you're doing research, but it'll be much less psychologically related. It's more kind of market research. I work for a charity. I know a lot of people kind of volunteer with a charity during their undergrad and then become, I don't know what the name of the role is, like a charity manager. They like run a branch, or they will like be a fundraising officer, that kind of thing. So you're not necessarily using direct things from your psychology degree, but your psychology degree will make you stand out more than someone who obviously doesn't have a degree. You can also work as a teacher of English as a foreign language, so you can go abroad and teach English. You can teach English in like international schools. Again, obviously that's kind of linked to teaching, but it's less so that you're not doing a course. You kind of, because you've done university, you have to have a good enough English level to have passed a degree, so you're almost just able to do that. You can also get qualified status to become a teacher of English as a foreign language teacher of English as a foreign language. I don't know how you do that. There are lots of options. You have masters, which you are directly using your psychology skills. Expensive though, you're kind of going into research. Doctorates, very expensive, have to be committed to the career you want to do, but lead you directly to a career. Certificate or diplomas, faster than doing a doctorate, gets you in a lower place but doing similar skills. You are using your psychology skills, you are doing therapeutic interventions, teaching, quite a straightforward path. Directly in a degree, directly in a job, could be related to your degree, could not be. You can kind of pick and choose. Working straight in a related field, I would say a lot of those things should be done in undergrad or could be done in undergrad. Because a lot of them, I would say, don't lead to much progression. Some of them will be useful for a master's in the future. Not all of them will lead you to career progression. Into another field is more difficult because you are competing with people who maybe have degrees specific to that field. Like marketing, people will have a degree in marketing, or recruitment, maybe you want someone who's done business, or I don't know if there's a human resources degree. Those will allow for career progression though. You know, you go and work as a marketing assistant, you can work your way up. If there is anything else I can think of, I will add a editing Satya clip. But I think that is kind of everything.
That is not everything. You can do conversion degrees like law, etc. You can also do some PhDs without a master's.
There are lots of jobs. There are also just random jobs where your psychology degree will probably be useful. Like if you just trawl Indeed, there's a lot of things like working as a, like a lot of jobs on Indeed will just say psychology graduate. It's just like a support worker for like a one-to-one child with special needs. It's kind of the only thing that seems to come up when you search psychology graduate, so you tend to have to be more specific in your searches. Those jobs are always going, like constantly. So if you just want to kind of do something maybe part-time, one-to-one, that's also an option. That is, I think, all of the jobs I found. Hopefully that was useful. I will put timestamps obviously so everything is organised and you can actually see kind of everything in this. If you have any questions, let me know. But again, I'm only a psychology student. I might not know the answer. Also, you don't have to plan for these like when you apply for your psychology degree. I don't know what I'm doing yet. I'm finishing my degree in like 6 months.